This episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast is brought to you by Nomadicare. Now, personally, I love Nomadicare. I've used Nomadicare, and I recommend the company to all new travelers. What Nomadicare does is it takes the fear out of getting set up with a bad recruiter, which is the biggest fear that you have jumping into this journey. So they sit down, they interview recruiters, they vet them, get them on a list, and then provide them to you as a free service, as a free recruiter matchmaking service in order to get you started on your journey. Now, usually you only get 2 recruiters going through Nomadicare, but being a listener of the show, you can get 3. So this is how it's going to work. You go to nomadicare.com/Dylan. You will get set up with 3 recruiters to be on your dream team, as well as a guide to get you started on your journey.
The second sponsor of the show is TravCon, the Travelers Conference. I'm super excited to announce them as a sponsor of the show. TravCon was there for me before I got started as a medical nomad, and now I'm actually involved with the planning of the event. So super aligned, super congruent. I've been promoting them before they were even a sponsor, and so I'm excited to have them on. So there are 3 main reasons that you should go to TravCon this year. Number 1, value. This is the cheapest conference to go to as a medical professional. And also the only place that I've ever felt like royalty when you're walking in and all these staffing agencies and all these recruiters want to talk to you and you're bumping elbows with these travelers and they're interested about your story, about where you're coming from and what you're doing. And it's overall just a really good feel-good event. Number 2 is education and growth. So this conference was founded on the realization that there's a lot to know to be a medical traveler, to be a medical nomad. And so this is where you go to get the most updated tax information. This is where you go for those really niche specific questions on what's it like to travel in an RV and what's it like to travel to Hawaii. And then 3rd, community. This is where a lot of my traveler friends that are very near and dear to my heart right now, this is where we met. So this is where the relationship sparked. It's also one of the only places that you get to go to and see the leaders and meet the leaders of the industry, both on the staffing agency side and on the traveler side, and also get to meet your recruiters face-to-face that you've been working with. So TravCon is always in September every year. TravCon is also always in Las Vegas. The link is going to be in the show notes for you to get your ticket. I'll be at TravCon. All my friends will be at TravCon. I hope to see you there. Hey Nomads, this is Dylan coming at you from San Diego, California. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the New Medical Nomads podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dylan Callier, and today is the start of the negotiation series. This episode I'm going to title, How to Earn the Most Money as a Traveler. And I'm going to tell you the ultimate goal as a traveler in order to do that. And so the last episode I talked about this experience with Bro Chick and what happened with her and kind of what is going to kickstart me off on this whole negotiation things. And there's actually a couple other things. So I've seen posts, I've seen and heard through messages that there's a lot of half-truths out there. I'm not necessarily going to say people are going out of their way to lie and give this misconception about kind of negotiating and how to earn the most as a traveler. And kind of different and not so good ways to go about it. I'm not going to say it's malicious, but there are some blatantly obvious falsehoods that are going around in the Facebook groups, things like earning $200,000 plus on how much you can make as a traveler, just really bad tips on how to handle these relationships as a traveler with your recruiter, because you're supposed to be a dream team. You're supposed to have a dream team where you're the one going out, saving the day at the clinic, at the hospital, whatever, stepping in, getting compensated fairly for that. And then also the recruiter is on your side. They're getting compensated. The staffing agency is happy. Everybody's winning. And that's how this is supposed to work. Not supposed to go into just really aggressive and really hard and trying to keep a healthy relationships, and healthy relationships are going to be how you earn the most cash. And so the ultimate goal with being a traveler, to earn the most money as a traveler, is not to negotiate. And so that's gonna come off and you're like, what? Not to negotiate. So here's the deal. The ultimate goal for this industry, for myself, I believe, and that the New Medical Nomads community believes in, is getting to a point where you don't have to know all the nitty gritty and all the questions to ask in order to get a fair deal. One that sucks as a new traveler, and that's what you hear of all the horror stories walking into this, and you come up with your guard up. And so it's already a fearful situation, and it's really bad on us emotionally, because we're supposed to be excited about this whole thing, not worried about somebody, coming behind us and, taking us for a ride, and being able to trust your recruiter and know that they have you at the best interest of their heart and also giving you fair deals. And so the ultimate goal is not to negotiate. The ultimate goal is to eventually get this to where the industry, there's not this back and forth between multiple recruiters. When a recruiter gives you a pay package, that is the best they can do. That is the ultimate goal, is to have those relationships and have all recruiters do that, to where this is the best we can offer. And we're not going to waste time of going back and forth, and you don't have to worry about me withholding money or anything like that. I'm not going to all of a sudden suddenly have an extra $200 to throw your way. Like, this is the ultimate goal. And so there are staffing agencies out there doing that. They're trying to automatize the process of offering just a straight flat percentage of the bill rate to us as travelers. And then it's a take it or leave it sort of situation. And I love that, because I don't have to worry about, this new recruiter, coming towards me later or something like that, or I get a better offer and I go with them, and then all of a sudden they're trying to offer me this big chunk of change before, because now that breaks my trust with that recruiter. It's like, wait, you were just sitting on that? Why didn't you offer that to me in the first place? Now I'm starting to think about, oh, what about that contract and the other contract that I took with them? Things like that. And so it really breaks down the trust when you have a recruiter all of a sudden in those situations, after you've negotiated hard, come up with a whole bunch of money that they were just sitting on. And so the ultimate goal is not to have a recruiter do that. And the ultimate goal is to have a really good recruiter and a really good relationship with that recruiter in order to have that scenario to where you don't have to spend all this time and have all of that emotions going into doing the negotiations, that what they're offering up front is the best. Now, that being said, most recruiters do have a percentage range. It's pretty rare so far for me to see a company that actually just flat ties, kind of like automatize what I was talking about earlier. It's a very new thing where they have a flat percentage fee. Most recruiters will have a percentage kind of window that they keep their travelers in. So there is still at that point a little bit of negotiating that kind of goes into it, but it's not going to be something drastic. It's not going to be $200 per week that they're hiding from you. And so that is the ultimate goal. And that's ultimately how you make the most out of as a traveler, is having those strong relationships with that recruiter, with a company that can get you a job, that hustles hard. And then when they give you this offer, that this is the offer and you don't have to worry and have all their emotions going into it. So I wrote down some notes here. I'm going to go over them for the recruiter relationship. So between you and the recruiter, there is this expectation of fairness, that yes, the recruiter is a representative of a staffing agency. First of all, recruiters' roles are pretty hard. They're kind of like the middle person. And a lot of times when there's maybe something that goes wrong on the contract side of it, or something goes wrong on the staffing agency side of it, they're the ones that have to represent both sides. So it's a very difficult job. So thank you so much for recruiters that are listening to this for having that role. I know that the burnout is very high for recruiters, and I know that most recruiters actually don't make it past a year. And so it's a very high turnover rate. But for those of you that stick with it, thank you so much. You are definitely part of the dream team. So fairness is expected between the traveler and the recruiter. That means clear communication, and that means direct communication. So fairness being, okay, when the recruiter has a job, they're going to offer you a fair rate. Now, the other side of that is to be a fair traveler. So if they offer that job to you the same day that, or maybe, excuse me, we'll say this, they offer that job to you on a Tuesday. Another company offers you that same job on a Friday. You go with company 2 because that company paid just slightly higher than the others. But you waited 4 days to kind of hear back from that second company. That's not fair. If it was during the same day, I would agree, go ahead and go with the one that's higher. But the first offer should, in fairness, be the one that gets incentivized and one that gets prioritized because they hustled harder. They got it to you sooner, especially if it's a day, 2 days, 3 days, like especially 3 or 4 days in advance. That's when you should go with. And so if in this job, in this industry, you have to be quick anyhow, I'm not sure why you'd wait 3 or 4 days, but the one that offers the job first, if it's the same day, then you could, talk about that recruiter, be clear with your intent and your rules. This is actually something I sent out recently with an email, because originally I had always gone with the first opportunity, or the one that presented it to me first. And it came down to maybe even 2 hours before. And I always took the first job first, the one that was offered to me first, always took that first. And I only recently changed it to, if it's offered to me in the same day, I'm actually going to go with the one that's higher, because that happened twice. And the second one was higher to a point that it made it significant for me to change the rule. So you can do what you want, just be direct and be fair about your communication, and don't take a job that one recruiter gave to you and then run to another recruiter and say, hey, can you look at this job and see if you can offer me a better rate? That is unfair, and that's just sneaky, and nobody's going to want to work with you or a traveler that does that. And so fairness is expected, not just from the recruiter side, but also from the traveler side. Number 2, if fairness is expected in how they offer pay on the first time, then that will also follow into all the other categories. Say for when certain scenarios come up, and I got a specific story about this one. When a certain scenario comes up, that recruiter will have your back, because it's the right thing to do, and it is what is fair. And so they will be your representative to the company, to the staffing agency, saying, you know what, in this situation, I think we do need to just take a hit and keep this traveler happy. They've been excellent travelers for me, and I want to make sure that they get taken care of in this scenario, the situation. So in this scenario, the story I'm going to tell is a friend approached me, and for those who are savvy about overtime rates, you know that you should be making overtime around the same amount that you'd make with a blended rate. Now, blended rates are the total amount of money that you're making per hour working those normal first 1 to 40 hours, or 1 to 36 if you're a nurse doing 12-hour shifts. And that is the blended rate per hour that you are making in total. If that blended rate is $40, and then after the 40th hour, you start working some overtime, and your taxable hourly is, say, at $20, the normal law is for the taxable to be paid at 1.5 hourly. So then now it's like this $20 is now $30, where you were making 40 and now you're working extra time, you're working overtime, and now you're dropping to 30. That's not fair. And so there are ways that the staffing agency can kind of come forward and make sure that you're still making that same amount for the blended rate. Now, in this specific scenario, this overtime was worked in California. And so this individual was working 4/10s, and in California, anything over 8 hours per day means that is considered overtime. So even though he was working 40 hours per week, so not overtime judged by the United States government, but it was judged as 2 hours of overtime every day by the California government. So there's a contract he worked before. He knew this. He got taxable pay. And in this scenario, it wouldn't be the blended rate, just because they're not going to be making more money with that overtime. So his taxable was paid at 1.5 rather than closer to the blended rate, because it's still within that 1 to 40. I hope that makes sense. So the first contract that he took, his overtime was 1.5. Now, went into this next contract, all of a sudden his overtime, those 2 hours per day, he wasn't getting the 1.5 times, or the 1.5 multiplier for that hourly. And so he's like, what's going on? So he approached his recruiter, and the recruiter wasn't quite sure about it, kind of passed it to the account manager. Account manager came forward and said, actually, there's a law in California that that an entity can decide, if everybody is on board and signs up with it, that, oh, you are now saying you're basically excluded from that law. So companies, hospitals, if everybody agrees, everybody signs a piece of paper, that company can decide that we're not going to pay, we have an alternate shift, and we're not going to pay the overtime based on the California law. We're actually an exemption of that. Everybody agrees, and we're all cool. Well, this is what this clinic had done for my friend for the second contract. Before the first contract, they did not have the alternate shifts exclusion. So now he was expecting this overtime pay. Nothing was ever told to him about this overtime pay or about this exclusion. And so now this is one of those scenarios where it's like, what's the fair thing to do? And so the fair thing in this scenario would be that the staffing agency had this contract. They were aware of this issue. Recruiter didn't verbalize this. It would go back to the contract between the traveler and the recruiter. If the words in there didn't say that, oh, if there is an exclusion, you don't get to earn the overtime. If this wasn't communicated to the traveler, then in fairness, that traveler should be paid that overtime. Now, they can always go back and fix the contract later, but if there was nothing in the contract and the traveler wasn't told verbally that, hey, you actually won't be earning overtime this time around, then that would be unfair. So if you have a relationship built on trust, built on fairness, when those types of really specific nitty-gritty situations come up, then the recruiter is going to have your back. And you're not going to have to just worry about, oh, well, you know what, that was kind of what is said on the contract between the hospital and us. I know you don't see that contract, but sorry. And so if you have a relationship built on fairness, built on trust, you're going to make more in the long run throughout your career as a traveler. The third scenario is when you have this direct communication and you can talk about money and it's not really aggressive on either side. No one's getting feelings hurt. It's just a conversation. You're coming at it as a way to learn the business of traveling. When a massive bill rate comes along, both are winning and both of you are dancing. Both you as the traveler and both you as the recruiter. But when a massive bill rate comes along, some recruiters will not show certain travelers kind of, you know, the money that they could be making, because they know that traveler will either expect that always moving forward because they don't quite understand the business of traveling, or it's not a relationship built on fairness. And so the only one dancing in that scenario is a recruiter, because them and the staffing agency get to take those extra profits. And then you as a traveler are making what you would normally made as any other contract. And so when you have those really excellent relationships with the recruiters, when really unique opportunities come along with a high bill rate, then you both get rewarded. That's what's the great thing about a dream team, is that you both win in these scenarios. So that is the ultimate goal for this community, is that we don't have to negotiate. And when you have a recruiter that does do shady things, like you're working with two recruiters, you got a recruiter that offered you one job, this recruiter is offering you another one, and then that recruiter asks, wait, how much is that other one giving you? Actually, I can top that. Here, I'm going to give you an extra $100 a week. Like, that is shady. That is something that is going to set off red flags, and we shouldn't be rewarding that, because if we keep rewarding that, then they're going to keep doing that, and then they have to make that $100 somewhere else, and so they're going to be taking it out on the newer traveler that doesn't know all the questions to ask. And so we want this to elevate the industry and get this to be a better place to work for all travelers and for all recruiters as well. The big effect of this there's going to be less hard feelings. There's going to be less feelings of you as a traveler getting taken advantage of. If you stumble across, something that was unfair to you later on, and then now you're starting to question that entire relationship, and it can break that relationship. It'll break that trust. And I don't think you should work with a recruiter that you don't trust, because if you are unsure if they're going to be for you there with the pay package, are they really going to be there for you when you have a tough contract and you're having clinical scenarios and you're really worried and you really need to get out of there? Are they going to be the supportive one, or are they going to be kind of a barrier in the way? The bigger effect is that if we keep rewarding recruiters for doing shady stuff, they will keep doing it. If we start saying, no, I'm not going to work with you because of XYZ, and being really explicit with that and being very direct, saying, you know what, you asking and offering me more money after hearing the other recruiter's offer is something that I don't align with. And so I'm not going to work with you anymore. That will disincentivize that for them, because they're now losing a traveler. Now they're going to think, okay, so I need to reshape how I'm handling this whole recruiter business. And then they're going to start paying fairly every time. And then over the long run, they will get more travelers because of that, because the more people that talk highly of you and the less people that talk negatively about you means you get more referrals. So the big effect for this is newer travelers coming in. The better and more elevated this industry gets, the easier it is for them. And ultimately, more money is going to be spread across all travelers, not just the few that know the right questions to ask. And the final thought is this: the best recruiters don't have to play games in order to get travelers and in order to earn their staffing agency money. Because the more that you play games, the more back and forth that you go, the more feelings get hurt and the less travelers you have. So the recruiters that are good and they treat their travelers fair, they get a lot of referrals to the point that they don't need an extra traveler. And so if a traveler comes to them and says, hey, this company is offering me this, what do you got? And is really aggressive about things, they don't have to work with that traveler. They're like, whatever, like go on. I have like three others that I need to call today. That would be a slow day. So you want the best recruiters, because they're not going to play these games. And so I feel that the best recruiters, and they are the best recruiters, they offer it straight up. This is what you can earn. This is the opportunity. Either we take this job, or you know what, you're right, it doesn't fit with your financial goals, so we'll wait for the next one. And not going back and forth between, okay, what's your real minimum to take for this job, and things like that. Just use car salesman type stuff. And as a community, as nomads, we need to squash this out, because it's hurting all of the travelers, and in the long run, it's hurting you. So if you are a new traveler, I recognize that this negotiations one is probably going to grab a lot of attention. There's going to be a lot of eyes on it. If you're a new traveler and you're like, you know what, I have a friend that is in the is a traveler. They've only taken one contract though. I don't know if this recruiter is really as good as they say they are, if they're just really nice. If you're kind of starting out like I did and you don't know anybody in the industry to ask questions, there's a really simple solution to this, and it's using Nomadicare. So they are a sponsor of the show, and you can use the link provided in the show notes or just say my name when you're filling out the form, that you'll get 3 recruiters. And so you'll have your full dream team, you'll have your 3 recruiters, and you'll be able to get started. And all of them are going to be fair. They're going to offer it straight up front. You don't have to worry about getting taken advantage of, because this is a relationship built on trust and on fairness. And so I absolutely support Nomadicare. I believe 100% of what they're doing. And we have aligned goals of raising this industry and kind of squashing out the bad practices that have been going on for so long in this travel healthcare system. So if you like the show, thank you so much for the support. Absolutely love you guys. It means the world to me. If you are listening to this, you can find more episodes in the rest of the negotiation series on Spotify, on iTunes. We'll be releasing these once a week. If you want the early access to the episodes, you can catch them at YouTube. You can go ahead and subscribe there. And any subscriptions, any reviews, likes, comments, any of that, all the engagement helps more people to see this through the algorithms. So thank you so much. That's the ultimate goal of the podcast, is to help as many people as we can. to all travelers. That's how to earn the most money as a traveler throughout your career. That's the ultimate goal, is to get away from this car salesman type thing and all these like nasty negotiation tricks and stuff. But there is some other points that I'm going to be coming across, and we will be getting into the nitty-gritty of negotiations moving forward. So stay tuned, and all you nomads have safe travels.